Hi, I'm Nathan Cruz and welcome once again to Inside the Toy Room. So today we're not actually taking a look at something directly in this toy room, but we're going to be taking a look at something that's heavily influenced everything within this toy room, and that would be Saturday morning cartoons. Now, most people from my generation, which is the 1990s, will remember sitting down in the morning, probably with a bowl of cereal or something, and just watching whatever cartoons was getting broadcast in the UK. And over here it was very different to what it was in the United States. So Saturday morning cartoons over in the United States was a huge thing, and by the late 80s they definitely captured the format, knew what they was going for, and had marketed their toys subsequently to that. The UK was very late in this and very behind, and it's quite the interesting history. Now, to begin with, there was basically no kids TV in the UK, and that changed in the mid-70s, particularly in 1976, with Noel Edmonds' multicoloured Swap Shop. Now, this was way before my time, but I know who Noel Edmonds is. In fact, a lot of people say that he looks like an older version of me. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I like Noel Edmonds, so I'm going to take it as a good thing. Either way, the premise of the show was that kids would have a phone in or come on the show and talk about a hobby that they have, and they'd have something that they'd want to swap with something else, and a lot of that would be toys. So, you know, it may be that they have a particular Scalextric car that they want to swap for, I don't know, what was the toys back then? Did they really have that? Yeah, Captain Scarlet maybe. But that was basically it. You'd get the odd thing of Gerry Anderson, which those studios were in England, which produced both Captain Scarlet, Thunderbirds, Stingray. There was a few different ones that I'm probably forgetting, but the two that I remember would be Captain Scarlet and Thunderbirds, because they kind of had a relaunch in the 1990s. The premise of Swap Shop was simple. Include your audience and don't patronise them. And including the audience into the show and making it all feel like it was all part of this wacky experience was a format that would stick around for the better part of 25 years following that. There'd be a few changes here and there, but Swap Shop really initiated that start of what Saturday morning TV would look like for the next 3 decades pretty much. The first real look at Saturday morning cartoons was going to come in 1982 with the original name of Big Daddy's Saturday Show. The idea of that show was simple. It would be wacky competitions, a host, Big Daddy, the wrestler, making an appearance from the very popular in the UK at that time World of Sport Wrestling, and it would also feature some Warner Hanna-Barbera cartoons like Scooby-Doo, for example, and that would be the first real glimpse at Saturday morning cartoons being a part of our programming here in the UK. Now, just mere days before the show was due to air, unfortunately Big Daddy, Shelley Crabtree, had to cancel because of some health issues that would unfortunately later take his life. Due to this, the show was rebranded The Saturday Show, and it stuck around for a while, but by about 1984, in a bid to try and win kids over, they rebranded it The Saturday Starship. It just screams of adults thinking they know what kids want, right? And yeah, it took a bath in the ratings. It just dove, and it was cancelled by January 1985 because, yeah, I mean, kids just won't fall for that. It was like loosely based around a starship feel. Like, yay, kids like Star Wars, it's a starship. Awful. Now, one of the big things that would take place in pop culture in the late 80s would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, pretty much these guys right here are fondly remembered by everybody who grew up in the 1980s, 1990s, and pretty much ever since. You know these guys, whether you watch them or not. They were such a huge part of pop culture. Their history in the UK, however, is quite funny. So, 1987, Turtles debut in the United States and start to just dominate the TV ratings, particularly for kids television. So the UK wanted to get their hands into this, and it was the BBC that was the first people to take a look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but that would be the first issue. The fact that it was called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The UK may have this exterior of being beer drinking, loudmouth and tough and stubborn, but when it comes to our censorship, well, we're a bit about the whole situation. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had to be rebranded Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, and the episodes themselves had to be heavily changed. For example, Michelangelo is known for his nunchucks. Well, that was unknown to UK fans. He was not known for his nunchucks over here because... Basically, here in the UK, anytime Michelangelo was seen using his nunchucks, they had to edit the scene or completely cut it all together. Any fighting scenes, they would change the sound effects, get this, to sound less violent and more funny as to not scare children. Oh God, there's times that I look at our country's history and I'm so embarrassed. The current situation you could look at as well. Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, however, was still such a huge success in the UK, and its morning cartoon slot over on BBC was starting to get a lot of attraction for what cartoons could be. Just as ITV and BBC was really starting to get to grips with how popular cartoons could be, on November 2nd, 1990, the juggernaut known as Sky Television launched, and everything in the UK as far as television broadcasting would change forever. You see, at that point in the UK, we only had 4 channels. That's right, 4 channels. And let's face it, at that time, Channel 4 didn't really count unless it was showing an old run of Godzilla. It was terrible. By 1990, Sky Television came in, and we was getting access to all these different channels from across Europe, and more importantly, the United States. And the first one that all of us kids went to would be Fox Kids. It had everything. It had Batman the Animated Series. It would have Power Rangers with the fighting sound still in it. X-Men. It would later get the animated series of Spider-Man. It was awesome. And that is where Saturday morning cartoons really started to take a grip here in the United Kingdom. Now, our native broadcasting channels such as ITV and BBC obviously had something that they had to compete with here in Sky Television and the bid for ratings on that Saturday morning slot. And so they all started to kind of take things from those shows. ITV was the first to get Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and what they'd do in the weekdays, I remember the first 3 days they'd show 7 minutes of one episode and divide, so there'd be a 21-minute episode. You'd divide it over 3 days on the weekdays, and then on the Thursday and the Friday they would show episodes of Power Rangers divided into just 14 minutes, so it'd be one episode but divided into 2 over 2 days. Then they would repeat that episode on the Saturday. I mean, it's, yeah. And in the summer they just rerun the whole thing on a Saturday morning from, I think it was like 9:30 in the morning, and here's Power Rangers, here's Batman the Animated Series, here's a few Disney cartoons including the Hercules cartoon, Timon and Pumbaa, which was really good. I remember enjoying that a lot as a kid. They had a lot of good stuff on ITV, and that kind of seemed to be where you needed to be to watch cartoons on Saturday morning. Over on BBC, they had a channel called Live and Kicking. Live and Kicking actually debuted in 1993 and would be a host to so many different cartoons, as mentioned already, Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, as it was in the UK. It would later get, as I mentioned previously, the Godzilla series, and amongst various other things, but it still stuck to that narrative of a live TV show with a host, and in between this live audience participation, all these wacky things happening, we'd get some cartoons as well. And that would basically be how Saturday morning TV was in the UK. I remember ITV had Mr. Motivator hosting theirs. I remember some of his segues going into the episodes of Power Rangers was just amazing. His Hercules ones was always really good because he was in shape, right? And so, yeah, I guess he imagined himself as somewhat of a Hercules. But that was CITV on the Saturday morning versus Live and Kicking. Now, by 1998, something that everybody in the UK will fondly remember was SMTV, which was of course hosted by Ant and Dec, who were well known in the UK as TV presenters, a duo act. They'd formerly just come off of Byker Grove, which was a kids aimed soap opera, I guess, set in school, and now there was making a go as TV presenters, and SMTV did so well for them. They had a parody of Friends, which was Chums, and I remember they'd had an episode in particular where they had I think it was The Undertaker on there. They had some wrestlers on there from the WWE or WWF as it was back then to promote their UK tour. It was a really cool early morning show. Wonky Donkey, I remember that being on there as well. There was so much going on in that show. It was just a great channel. But at that point, by 1998, Sky Television had really started to take over homes across the UK, and by the 2000s, when Sky Digital launched, it was very hard to come by a household that didn't have a satellite dish attached to the building. and shows like SMTV and Live and Kicking was starting to go down the ratings, as kids could just go to Sky and you'd have your choice of Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Fox Kids, the Disney Channel. BBC would end up having their own channel on there for CB's feed, you know, much younger audiences. There was Nick Jr. and it continued to roll out to basically we're at the point where we are today. Saturday morning cartoons are now a thing of the past, unfortunately, due to different restrictions, and some of the ones over here in the UK now bleeding over to the United States, and kids TV shows just not being allowed to be action-packed as they were back in the day. So subsequently a lot of these turned to streaming services such as Netflix, and Disney now having their own channel is in Disney Plus, where we can fondly catch up on all those old X-Men, Spider-Man, Hulk, Silver Surfer, whatever it is that you want to watch, Timon and Pumbaa, as well as some of their newer stuff featuring the Avengers, Iron Man in his own new cartoon, all the different Spider-Man cartoons that they've been ever since. But that is basically the history of Saturday morning cartoons in the UK. It was pretty grim and pretty hard to come by, but for those little nuggets that we do remember, it was really good because we had some amazing cartoons at that time. We were very fortunate for the time period that we were born into, that those slots, however minimalistic they were, was made up by quality TV programming, from Power Rangers to Turtles to X-Men, Spider-Man to Batman, and so on. For me, as a 29-year-old man who is almost turning 30, I still like to make a bowl of Nesquik cereal or chocolate Weetos, sit on my sofa, turn on the television, go to Disney Plus, catch up on all those old cartoons and relive my childhood, put in a Batman animated series DVD, go to Netflix, put on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and I just relive it all, because for me that was a golden era for children to grow up with, and I may not be a child anymore, but it's great to watch those shows with nostalgic glasses on once again. With that, I'm going to hand things over to my good friend Michelangelo, depicted here as he was in the UK. Subscribe to the channel. Cowabunga, dudes!